Thank you so much, Kiran. Hello, everybody on the panel and everyone who's watching us virtually. My name is Shivam. I'm the product manager for Citrix Secure Private Access, something that I'll be talking to you about over the next couple of minutes, where I'll be touching upon its high level architecture. I'll talk to you about its key capabilities, some of its core features. But even before I get into the nitty gritties of the product itself, I want to touch upon some of the major customer needs that we have seen come across in the market when it comes to a product such as a backend application access solution. The first one being customers really want a solution that can give them access to all the different types of their end users, be it their employees, be it their third party contractors, their vendors, coming from any location, be it within the corporate network or outside the corporate network, from any device, and accessing any or various different types of applications that the corporate has. Secondly, they want to make sure that this access is always secure. But not only that, they want to have 24/7 observability into who is accessing what. And thirdly, they want to reduce costs and want to make sure that the solution is cost effective. Because what we have seen, what happens with a lot of customers is that over the years, because there's so much differentiation in the number of use cases with different types of users accessing different types of applications, that they end up they end up in a situation of amalgamation and proliferation of different solutions, which not only becomes difficult to manage, but the costs also rise greatly. And to solve for each of these concerns, the Citrix platform brings in the Citrix Secure Private Access solution. This works on the underlying principles of zero trust network access, starting first with the first principle, which is never trust and always verify, which means that at no point when the user is trying to access the application or when the application is getting accessed by the end user is you're actually trusting the user, because at all points, all the variables that would deem this end user to be a trustworthy user are being tested against. And if any of these variables would break or change, the end user's access would break or be blocked or limited. The second one is you give least privileged access, which means that you're only giving this end user access to the applications they need access to. For instance, in the case of, just a quick example, is in the case of a user who is coming in from the finance department, you're now only giving access to the applications which the finance user really needs, or the finance application in this case. The third one is you create per app connections instead of some of the legacy solutions, such as that of a VPN, where you create full SSL VPN tunnels and you give access to the entire network resource, which, by the way, becomes a risky thing to do, because then this user has this access to the entire network once they're inside, and on a rainy day they can easily hop on to some of the other backend resources, getting access to a lot more than they would usually want. And with a product like Secure Private Access, you are highly reducing that attack surface by just giving access at an application level. So I'm going to start with explaining you the architecture, in the sense coming in from the left side towards the right hand side, starting from how the experience is for the end user. As you can see, there's two touch points for the end user, which is kind of two different end user journeys. One being the Citrix Secure Access Agent, the other one being the enterprise browser, both being different end user experiences that we offer, depending on whatever your customer's use case is. Starting with the Citrix Secure Access Agent, that's a use case for your customers who are looking for a VPN replacement, who already have their in-house VPNs, but are looking for a solution that can replace those VPNs with a more secure ZTNA-based solution that would still give the end user experience as if they're logging to a VPN client. But what happens instead is they are still creating per app connections to the backend applications, again, making it a lot more secure, but having the ZTNA principles intact. That means once you're logged into the VPN agent, you're getting access to the web apps through your native browsers, which is your preferred browsers like Chrome, Firefox, or Edge, or you're getting access to all of your TCP UDP, which is client-server applications, directly through your desktops. The second one is the Citrix Enterprise Browser, which is pretty cool because customers nowadays also want a way for accessing these backend web applications through a lot more secure enterprise browser mechanism. Think of this as a use case for a customer which has a lot of their employees or even third-party contractors coming in from unmanaged devices or BYO devices. But what they would rather have is them accessing these backend applications with a lot more security layers added that a Citrix enterprise browser offers, such as DLP controls, a lot of which with my friend Raina would show you in the demos, and it'll be much more clearer. But to name a few, it offers security controls such as DLP controls, data masking, anti-screen sharing. It offers security controls that would help restrict printing for end user, which you would probably not want to print something critical for your backend applications, restricting downloads and uploads, and can help create air gaps between the desktop that the user or the end device that the user is coming and the backend application. It can help containerize the movement of data between applications or even the browser and the desktop or the end device that the user is coming in from. So what you end up getting is a lot more secure method of accessing the same web apps and SaaS app that you would have otherwise accessed using a VPN, because you're just accessing it over a preferred browser, but rather with the enterprise browser, you add a lot more security layers with those added securities. Let's move on to the second side, which is where the magic happens, which is the Citrix SPA broker, wherein we're not only doing access management based on just the usual credentials of these end users, but we go a lot more granular. Starting first with the identity of the user, which means we not only check who the user is, we ask what is the role of the user, what department are they coming in from, what device are they using, and what application do they want to access. And if any of these, based on obviously the admin's choices, does not match with what the end user is, we won't get access. We go one level granular with giving by doing what we call as the device posture checks, which means we're not only checking in on the user, we're also checking in on the device that the end user is coming in from by posing questions if this device is actually a compliant device or a non-compliant device, which means that the admin can have configurations in the environment with an SPA to deem a device, to know if that device would actually be the right device logging in and getting access to these backend application. And some of those questions that the admin can ask are, for instance, does the device have the right operating system installed? Does it have the right operating system version installed? Does it have the right anti-malware installed? Does it have the right antivirus installed? Or the right certificates to know if it's a managed or a BYO device, or the right registry key settings that the admin would want on a certain device which is accessing their corporate applications. And based on each of these, if something breaks or something that the admin doesn't want, you can actually change, or you can either limit the amount of access that the backend user gets or even block it completely.
Shivam, does this integrate with endpoint device management? So if maybe I'm using InTune, do I get intelligence directly from the InTune server side, or is it simply that the agent is detecting that this is an InTune managed device and establishing its own security posture for this?
And that's a great question. And yes, it does. So we do have...
there was an or in there.
Yeah, at first, I think.
Yep. No, it actually does. I mean, we also do support all of the things that I said ourselves with our own service, which it would do all the checks that I mentioned. But you could also have these endpoint management. We currently support two, which is InTune and CrowdStrike, but we're also adding more in the future. But if you already have, let's say, Microsoft InTune, and you already know that these are the checks that you've already created for that, so we take up the results from those solutions, and then you can use it on our softwares to just directly block or reduce the access that you want to give.
Where does this private access broker reside?
It depends. It depends if you want to have a cloud solution or if you want to have an on-prem solution. On the cloud solution, it's Citrix managed, which means it would reside on one of our globally scalable POPs. And if it's an on-prem solution, we'd have it reside on one of your data centers wherever you'd want the infrastructure to be.
Can I run both? Because I assume customers would want to.
That's a great, yeah. That's actually a very major customer requirement, wherein I'll give you some use cases, right? There's been use cases wherein for some users, maybe some of the users are actually working in remotely, they would rather have all of them users coming in from the cloud, because some of those applications that they're accessing are not that critical. But there are some use cases where the backend applications are critical enough for them to have the data to be routed on-prem.
I mean, like, think about like full-time employees and contractors. I mean, it would make a lot of sense to have, that dual setup.
No, I know. That's why I'm asking, like, can you support both use cases at the
Yes,
same
yes,
time?
we do. So we are right now actually building the same use case. That's why I'm kind of mentioning we are building a use case in the present, which would help the customer switch between on-prem or cloud for any of the applications that they want to access. Which means if they want to fail over from cloud, in case on a rainy day everything fails over on a pop, or maybe their data center goes down for some reason and they want to switch over to another data center on-prem, that will act as a failover mechanism for them to move and switch from cloud to on-prem. And also, let's say if they want to have like a mixed mode wherein they want to have some of the applications accessed over the cloud, but some critical applications accessed on-prem, then that's also available.
And do I get
So it is available.
It's going to come in the next 3 months, I know, but it's something it's just coming in. We are building, so I just want to say that it is. But yeah.
And do we get geography as well? I mean, I live in New Zealand. We're unlikely to build something on-prem in New Zealand, but if I'm here in California, the internet connectivity is much better for me,
Yes.
as I move from place to place.
Yeah, so I think what you're questioning on is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the routing mechanisms. If someone's coming in from Europe and accessing something within Europe, and maybe versus someone who's coming in from California, how does our product kind of route them in the most efficient way? Is it?
But so both the users from different locations, but also that from on-prem to cloud service, and can I be choosing
Correct.
based
Yes.
on where the user is?
It's totally dependent on how you would want to set up the environment. If someone is coming in from a different geolocation and you would want to have these particular users on that geolocation to be coming in through the on-prem route, that's possible. And same goes on for, let's say someone is coming in from California and you would rather have them go over the cloud. That's all possible. That's what I was actually coming into next. That gives me a great segue unless there's more questions. Because what we also support is contextual awareness, which means that once you have done the device posture checks of the device, and once you have done the identity checks of the user, we turn into asking the questions of what is the context of this user and the device, which means what is the geolocation of the user? What is the network location of the user? Maybe you would not want some of the users coming in from a particular country getting access to an application, right? There are situations wherein you would rather have these users only access these applications from one specific country, maybe. Or network location, for instance. Maybe some of the users you would want to give direct access to the backend applications if they are inside your corporate network, but rather have them route through our service nodes or this infrastructure as you're seeing when they're coming in from a remote location. So it's a lot more context aware as to where is this user, what is the geolocation, what is the network location, and also about the device, if it's a mobile device or a desktop device. And having said all of this, I want to also mention that this is not only being done once. It's not only once that you just check it as to what's the location and all of these magical checks that I'm talking about. You keep checking them continuously when the access is provided, and even when the access is being on the journey of the entire access of this end user. And if anything changes or breaks, the access changes or breaks. And now moving on to the last part, which is the data center side of things, wherein you host your backend applications. You would usually have, depending on if you're on the cloud or on-prem, our NetScaler or the connector appliances that would act as a gateway between the backend applications and the service nodes, giving you access to all the different types of web applications such as intranet portal, your Jiras, your Confluences, or your SaaS applications such as Office 365, Workday, Salesforce, or your TCP UDP applications such as access to your SQL databases, CIFS shares, access to a lot of the VoIP based applications. So all of it is easily accessible through one solution. I'm going to move ahead. Now I want to talk about some of the key capabilities of the product. I'm going to go in like an anti-clockwise fashion, starting from the first one on the top. And I've kind of talked about the first two, which is SPA, all in all, provides you zero trust based access to your SaaS, web, and TCP UDP applications. And it's a lot more aware in terms of its identity, its device posture, and its context. I did mention on the previous slide that there's two touch points, which are both agent-based, one being the Citrix Secure Access Agent, and the other one being the Citrix Enterprise Browser. But what I didn't mention is that there's also another method of accessing, which I think Kiran mentioned briefly, which is agentless. One of the use cases that we have seen a lot with our customers is they have these unmanaged devices and BYO devices, but they do not have the capacity of having an agent installed on these devices. Because let's say, just as an example, right, this is a healthcare customer which has these doctors and nurses working all the time, and they rather prefer having access to these applications through their own BYO devices, like an iPad, for instance. Or let's say someone is coming from a shipping industry and they have a port available where there's all of these end users would rather just have accessibility to their own BYO devices than having a managed device. How do you give access to these end users where you just cannot control the end device? What we serve as a solution here is an agentless access method, which would, keeping all the ZTNA principles in check, would easily allow you backend application access, making sure that you are able to access those backend applications through your native preferred browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, Edge, whatsoever. So you're still under the ZTNA umbrella, you're still getting limited access and least privilege access, and it's agentless. The next part is the admin console management, which again Kiran mentioned quite a bit about. At Citrix, we make sure that your admin manageability is a lot more easier and simplified. We do not want to give you a spread out or proliferated experience when you're accessing either your virtual applications or desktops, or your SPA web applications or TCP UDP applications. Your admin console is one. That means you do not have to learn different admin consoles for one kind of application and a different one for the other one. You get a unified experience when the admin can access and manage and create or delete everything at one place. Secondly, it's also unified for the observability. That means you get one monitor, which is actually the solution, what we call it as the Citrix monitor, one monitor to see observability into all the different kind of applications that you have access from at the Citrix platform. So it's a very easy mechanism for the admin to manage all of their backend applications, be it their virtual apps, their desktops, their web SaaS, TCP UDP applications. We have a global scalable POP infrastructure, which means no matter where your end users are, if you're accessing things over the cloud, we have availability of those POP infrastructures for your end users to be accessing their backend apps in the most performant way. Not only that, I would just talk about one more thing, which is that we are a lot more granular when it comes to, and we provide a lot more flexibility when it comes to routing your access, depending on your use case, whether you want to route your access through, let's say, our infrastructure over through the SPA service node, or you want to route the access through your own corporate networks or through the internet. We give you possibilities for routing differences for different types of users. And lastly, we serve all the different kinds of adaptive authentication and single sign-on and MFA mechanisms, such as basic single sign-on, form-based single sign-on, Kerberos, so on and so forth, and also all the IDPs for your MFAs and signing in as well, such as AD, Azure AD, Ping, Okta, so on and so forth. So we serve all of them when you get access to your backend apps.
Does the device posture support any user behavior management monitoring tools?
Can you just elaborate on that?
Something that would identify the actual actions that I'm taking. I've seen one product which will identify the rhythm of somebody's typing, and if that rhythm changes, they'll be identified. This is somebody who has taken over, walked away from your laptop. Somebody start typing in it.
That's a pretty cool feature, I would say. We do not. Yeah, I agree.
And I'd expect third-party integration rather than building your own. That was cool.
Yeah. We do not support that yet, but we actually do support something similar, like a little bit far further, but maybe that's something of interest. And I would like to mention that because with the enterprise browser, what we do is AntiKey Logging, which means if, let's say, one of your end users is doing something fidgety, or for instance, let's say if there's you don't know, you can't trust the device on what's installed on the device, you can have AntiKey Logging for certain applications, which means whatever's being typed is not being recorded. I mean, we do provide that kind of, but not on the device posture, but I take it as a feedback for my roadmaps going further.
So, sorry, just a quick follow-up on that. So that would require an agent on that device.
That's right. Yes.
Important to say that.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions? If not, I just want to sum it up here by mentioning some of the common use cases I've talked about in the previous slide. One being we provide access to all your backend applications using an agent-based method. I talked about the Citrix Secure Access Agent and the Enterprise Browser, both giving you access for different use cases for your employees or your contractors coming in from your managed or unmanaged device, allowing you to access these applications, web, SaaS, TCP, UDP, in the preferred way, which is if you want to have a VPN replacement use case, we've got that. Or if you want to access these web apps through an enterprise browser with all the added enhanced security settings, we have that as well. And then there's a second part to it, which is the agentless access, because we want to serve that as well, wherein you don't have the capacity to have anything installed on those end agents, but you still want to give them zero trust access. We have an agentless method as well. And lastly, we're not only touching upon the user experiences on the end user side, but also for the admins, because a lot of the times what we hear is that the admin wants to have more manageability of the end user's device, in the sense they want to do GPO policy push, password managements, and we do that with the help of one of our agents. If that's installed, as soon as you just log into the laptop and as soon as you have internet access, these devices are domain joined, and then the admin has all full control on your device. They can do policy pushes and password managements and so on and so forth. And lastly, as I was talking about earlier, I would, on my last slide, I want to talk about the deployment flexibility. We've got two different solutions. One being the Citrix managed solution, which is on cloud. This is more for customers who want that flexibility and scalability of having their infrastructure over the cloud. Maybe they have a smaller IT team that cannot be dedicated for their huge infrastructures on-prem. Or for instance, if they want the capacity of having all of their end users who are global to be served from a solution that's managed by their solution provider, then that's the solution for them. And we also have an on-premise, all-in-all customer managed solution, which is ideal for businesses who probably would already be having some of our existing infrastructure, such as a NetScaler, or maybe they have highly regulated industries such as finance, healthcare, where they have some data sovereignty issues or constraints to keep the data within their residencies, or some large enterprises with dedicated IT teams who want to have the control on data that's being served through these solutions. I would just like to briefly call in Reina, who would want to talk about the NetScalers here, which is part of the on-prem solution as well.
Yeah, so NetScaler is one of the critical points, entry points for our on-prem solution. NetScaler not just does the authentication and authorization for all the requests, so it's really like we authenticate and authorize the user, but not just that, we are also authorizing the application, like, is this user really allowed to access this application? That's all part of the NetScaler. But NetScaler does a lot more. It's an application delivery controller. It also provides like the web application firewall or bot protection when a request comes in. So we do a lot of security checks before we really allow that request to pass through to your internal on-prem applications. So like also we can do spread across with global server load balancing, just distribute the entire connections across multiple data centers because of redundancy, whatever you want to take. As I said, application delivery controller, load balancing, context switching, all the things are already in NetScaler available